Hopefully it's sharing. I think everything should be good. All right, so welcome back, guys, to the Kings of the Queen City podcast. Zach, myself, along with Matt are back, and we're going to be discussing a little bit of the NHL with the upcoming NHL draft. Matt's mostly going to have that discussion. I'll try and pitch in where I can, but he's really the knowledgeable expert on that area of sports, so we'll leave the most of the talking to him. And then after that, we are going to discuss the trade that happened just a few hours ago. The Cleveland Browns finding a suitor, sending Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers for a future 5th-round pick. And then after that, depending on how much time we got left, we might have to split this episode up into 2 parts. But depending on how much time we got left, then I am going to cover the World Cup 2022 groups. I'll kind of just give my insight on who I think is going to finish top and bottom of each group. So, Matt, if you want to start off the discussion, then we'll get right into the NHL.
Yeah. So this is actually being recorded the day before the NHL draft. It's tomorrow night, Montreal. It kicks off at 7, round 1, and then Friday is rounds 2 through 7. Zach and I's team, as you all know, and all of our followers mostly are Buffalo sports fans. So our team is the Sabres. Sabres are going to be very busy this year at the draft yet again. And this is going to be the 3rd draft that's going to be headed by Kevin Adams and his new scouting department that he brought in a lot of analytical guys for, which so far it's really hard to evaluate drafting in the NHL. Mostly because a lot of guys take a while to crack the lineup. But from what we have seen so far, it's been very, very different from past general managers and past Sabres regimes. So I thought we'd start off just by looking at the 2 past drafts that Kevin Adams has done. So the first one was in 2020. That was the COVID year in the NHL. Definitely a difficult situation for Kevin Adams jumping in. I think Zach would agree with that. Everybody kind of was cleaned house with the Sabres, I want to say, with less than a month to go for the NHL draft. I mean, I'm sure he was made aware of the position ahead of that. But even if he wasn't, so far, like I said, the evaluations are tough, but that draft looks pretty good. The Sabres only owned 5 picks in that draft. In the first round at 8 overall, they took Jack Quinn. Jack Quinn has been a phenomenal player so far, at least at the American level. He's a right winger who's expected to make the jump to the NHL next year, will likely be a Calder favorite. And this year we have, I'm just going to give you, some of their stats just to show you the progress that some of these guys have made. Jack Quinn last year had 45 games played. He did have a few injuries. He is a bit on the smaller side. We did get to see him in 2 games at the NHL level, though. But in the 45 games with Rochester, he had 26 goals, 35 assists, and 61 points. That's pretty impressive, especially for a kid that Zach would be able to attest to this. I was a little skeptical of coming out of the draft, and I was a little upset with the pick at first, especially with guys like Marco Rossi still sitting on the board. But if Jack Quinn is able to translate this goal scoring ability to the NHL, the draft pick will have paid off phenomenally. The next one was a round 2 pick at 34. That's John Jason Peterka, or better known as JJ Peterka, right winger who came out of the DEL, which is not a common place that the Sabres have selected from. But this player was very well at the Rochester level again. 70 games played for Peterka, 28 goals, 40 assists for 68 points. That's almost a point per game. Even at the American level, that's pretty impressive. And it was really good to see him translate from the European to the North American game so quickly. And then the next 3 have not really made their jumps yet, if you will. Matteo Constantini, who Kevin Adams was very familiar with. He worked with him for a long time at the Junior Sabres when he was part of that organization. He's currently playing in the NCAA at the University of North Dakota. 35 games played, 8 goals, 13 assists, 21 points. Albert Lexinen and Jacob Konechny were 2 7-round selections, so don't expect them to be NHLers really, but they did have decent seasons as well. Then coming into 2021, Kevin Adams lucks out in his first, I would say, fully prepared draft, winning the draft lottery. Owen Power. And so far, he has been very good. Huge kid too. I believe he stands at 6'6". He joins what is being called now the Big Three in Buffalo on defense. We have Owen Power, who is a very tall man, Matthias Samuelsson, another very tall man, and Rasmus Dahlin, the silky Swede. So building a very impressive defensive core early on. And he played in the NCAA for the University of Michigan, a stacked Michigan team. 33 games played, 3 goals, 29 assists, 32 points. That's a lot by a defenseman, especially at the college level. And then last year, season ended a bit short. They did not win the national title as expected. So Owen Power comes up to Buffalo for 8 games. He has 2 goals, 1 assist, and 3 points. And luckily, it was 8 games and not 9. So a year of his ELC is not burned yet. Zach, really quickly break here. What did you think of Power in the 8 games that we did see him in Buffalo?
Honestly, like you said, I was very impressed with him. It kind of seemed like he wasn't nervous at all, and he was just kind of ready to just whatever situation he was put into, he's just ready to play his own game. And I don't remember exactly how I felt on him when we were drafting him. I know we had debated it a little bit at work a bunch. But regardless of whatever my opinion of him might have been then, I'm very happy with how the pick is so far turned out from what we've seen at a college level and in that short time in the NHL. So like I said, anything that I said in the past, I completely reverse it. I'm really liking him as a selection and a player right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you and I discussed it, and I was skeptical of him as well coming out of the draft, just for the fact that the kid was so big. And, we maybe were a little bit biased here in Buffalo because Tage Thompson, with how big he was, it took him a while to figure out his skating ability. And from what I had seen at Michigan, his skating wasn't phenomenal, but it was definitely good. So I had a little bit of concern how that would translate to the NHL level. But even in his first game, which was, I believe, against the Toronto Maple Leafs, he played extremely good and was a very smooth skater, not really off balance at all, very stable and agile on the ice. So I was really impressed with that. His shot is a little weaker than I had thought, but obviously that's something that he can grow with. But he wasn't afraid to jump in the rush offensively either. We saw him many times down below the other team's goal line. And I was actually impressed. He had a play where he went down below the goal line to assist in a scoring chance, and then he back checked, and he was back within seconds and caught up to a guy that was trying to break out. So very pleased with that pick so far. We acquired another first-round pick 2 days before the draft last year. Zach and I were very happy at work when we found out about Rasmus Ristolainen finally being shipped out to Philadelphia, and shocked at the return that we had gotten a first, a second, and a Robert Hagg. So with that pick, we took Isaac Rosen, and this was a guy that I thought was a little off the board and a little bit of a riskier pick. And it's riskier not because I don't think he will be an NHLer. I think he will, but it's more of a swing for the fences, like the upside with this player type of pick. He's a very good shooter in the SHL last year. He had 28 games played. He had 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. It's not bad at the Swedish hockey level against men. And he did at the end of the year sign a contract to move over to Rochester next year, which is, I think, going to be really good for his development, because in the SHL, he did have limited ice time. So the sample size that we got from Isaac Rosen this year was a little bit smaller than I think we would have expected. And then really quickly running through the other picks that were made, there was 2 second-rounders, Prokhor Poltapov and Alexander Kiskov, 2 Russians, which the Sabres had not taken Russians in the draft in a very, very long time. And with everything with the state of the world, Who knows what's going to happen with these two players and any Russians taken in the draft this year. Well, that's something that we have to see unfold. But so far, great reviews on both Poltapov and Kisakov as players. Kisakov is on the smaller side. He has a little bit more skill. He definitely needs to bulk up at 150 pounds if he expects to make the NHL. Their third rounder, Steven Sordinian, hasn't really broken through yet. Two guys that kind of shocked everybody, and I think that I'm really impressed with the Sabres possibly hitting on some later round picks. And again, it's way too early to tell, but Josh Bloom and Oliver Nadeau. Bloom finished a very impressive year in the OHL with Saginaw Spirit. He had 67 games played, 30 goals, 31 assists, 61 points, was counted on as a, I wouldn't say veteran, but a leader in some ways. And he did also sign to Rochester at the end of his season. So we're bringing in already Rosen and Bloom to the Americans. And then the same thing is expected to happen with Oliver Nadeau from the QMJHL, who actually was one game shy of making the Memorial Cup in the CHL. So he had a very good year and was counted on in some big goals in the Memorial Cup tournament. He had 65 games played, 35 goals, 43 assists for 78 points. That's a really good number. I mean, those are like Nathan McKinnon type numbers at the QMJHL level. It's very similar statistics. And then their lower round picks, I'm not going to mention them right now, but they are, nothing bad so far as scouting reports coming out about any of these players, which is very good to see from Kevin Adams. Sorry. So 2022 this year, 3 first rounders. We own pick number 9, which is Buffalo's own selection. We own pick 16. That came over in the Jack Eichel trade, which is looking to be a very good trade right now. And I think Zach would agree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
It's hard to win a trade like that, even with the rumors swirling about the personality and everything like that. When you trade away a guy that's a number 1 center and a point per game player, it's really hard to win a trade. But to get back a premier prospect, I believe, in Peyton Krebs, a solidified NHLer who's very good and a great leader in Alex Tuch, and then to get a first round and a second round out of that trade, that's, I think, the best that they could do, especially considering the fact that this player had an injury for a year and a half and needed surgery. So, and then the last first rounder we own, pick 28. That's the Florida Panthers pick. That is from the Sam Reinhart trade, which again, that appears to be a very good trade as well. Giving up Reinhart for a first and Devin Levi, who was a phenomenal goalie at the NCAA level. He had the best numbers in college hockey since 2001 in Ryan Miller.
Mm-hmm.
So a little Buffalo connection there.
Nice.
We own 1 second rounder, 1 third rounder, 1 fourth rounder, a 5th rounder that came from New Jersey in the Will Butcher deal, 2 6 rounders, one of which came from Florida in Robert Hagg's deal, and 2 7th rounders, one of our own and one from the recent Ben Bishop trade, which if I'm just going to put this out there for anyone that does not follow hockey very closely, Ben Bishop is not playing. He had a career-ending injury, and Buffalo simply made the trade just to get the salary cap. So I guess we'll talk about some of our draft targets. Zach, do you I know you didn't do your studying, but
hold on.
Do you know of anybody in the draft?
Yeah, I know of 2 people. Maybe I got a conversation starter here.
Well, Shane Wright doesn't count the first overall. So
Whoa. Let me find it first. Okay, I don't have the notification anymore. All right. So on that note, glad the Sabres retired Ryan Miller's jersey number. All right, go ahead, talk about the draft.
Well, it's not done yet. It's going to be next season they're retiring his number, but
yeah, it's coming.
This draft is it's really hard this year. I think it's like common for people to say that the board can go any which way. This is one of those years that I think the board is really, really out there. Like, there's a lot of different picks that could be made. And I have a list of like 4 guys at each of Buffalo's selection that I think are possibilities. And again, it's all going to depend on what happens tomorrow night. The way that the board falls and who goes where is going to determine what Buffalo picks. But if I was Kevin Adams right now, this is who I would be looking at. So at number 9, I'd be looking at, first off, Jonathan Lekkerimäki, player from the Swedish Hockey League, I believe he is. Very good player. Lekkerimäki, yes, I have him right here. Right wing, he's 172. He had 26 games played, 7 goals, 2 assists, and 9 points. So a very productive player at the Swedish level. He's known to have like a really good shot. I think that's something that the Sabres are looking at. Obviously, it doesn't address the Sabres' biggest need, which right now would be goaltending. But, they do have to kind of restock the prospect cabinet, as a lot of their prospects are looking to graduate already to the NHL level. Joakim Kemell is another name that's out there. That's another right winger, another good shooting and offensive producing winger. I think that he's most likely going to be gone at that point, but we will see. And then somebody who's been kind of, I wouldn't say linked to the Sabres, but the more likely option there would be center Matthew Savoie. He was ranked a little bit higher at the start of the year, but because of a shoulder injury that he just recovered from, he kind of fell a little bit. He did play in the WHL for, can't remember. So that's another good player. And then defenseman Pavel Mintyukov, very strong, sturdy defenseman, very two-way, I guess you could put it. But I don't think Buffalo is looking to add a defenseman, at least that early in the draft. So my want, Lekkerimäki, most likely Savoie. That's what I'm thinking at 9. Pick number 16. This is where things can get interesting. Center Brad Lambert, who played in the SHL, he was another guy that was very highly ranked, and he fell quite a bit. I wasn't able to do that much looking into Lambert. I've seen like scouting reports on him, and I've seen highlights, but I haven't been able to dig that deep into him to find out why exactly he fell as far as he did. Some people have him going as late as like in the 20s. So I think at 16, it's a little bit of a risky pick, but you are looking at a big centerman that can take a very good role for you in the future. Maybe he can play wing. We'll see. 2 defensemen I've circled here. Ryan Chesley, he's a pretty big defenseman, but the one that I have as my want at 16 is Liam Bichelle. And this kid is a beast on defense, very calm in his own end, very controlled, has great defensive awareness, 6'5", 225. Beast of a defenseman. He played in the SHL, 29 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. So that's pretty good for a defenseman of his age at the Swedish level. And then Frank Nazar, another name that's kind of been out there with the Sabres and rumors. He is a centerman who played at the USNDP. He was a very quick skater, very offensive-minded, and very sneaky, I would say. 5'10", 181. He's going to Michigan next year, so if the Sabres do select him, he will not be on the roster next year or in Rochester. For the USNDP, 56 games played, 28 goals, 42 assists, 70 points. Pretty good player, pretty dynamic offensively. And actually just this morning, rumors being leaked from, I can't remember if it was his coach or another Russian scout or another Russian coach. I can't remember who exactly, but the rumor is the Sabres are going to select Danila Yurov with their 16th overall pick. Kid coming out of Russia, right winger, 6'1", 179. He played in the MHL this year. He had 23 games played, 13 goals, 23 assists, 36 points. That point per game is actually ahead of players who played there before, such as Nikita Kucherov and Artemi Panarin when they played in the NHL. So his points per game is higher than that. So there's a little bit of a risk reward if you take him. Like I mentioned earlier, taking Russians this year is going to be pretty risky. But if this kid pans out the way that you may be looking at a player of that stature. So that's kind of what we're going to cover for the draft. I'm not really going to get into pick 28 much because it's all over the board at that point. Like, it's too hard to predict anybody going there. It was hard enough to predict 16. So, Zach, I don't know if you're aware of any of the free agents this year, but free agency starts July 13th. Is there anybody, whether it be trade or free agent, that you are hoping the Sabres pick up on?
Let me look this up real quick. I'll look up who's out there in the pool.
Yeah, no, that's fine. While you're doing that, I will just let everybody know of the 3 rumors that are kind of floating out there for free agency right now. So the oldest rumor, well, the first rumor that came out was the Sabres were in on Jack Campbell, a goaltender from Maple Leafs. That was actually shut down a couple days ago. Like, they are out on him. They are not bringing him into the fold. The older rumor was Mason Marchment, winger from the Florida Panthers. You're going to kind of notice a trend here in these guys that I list. So Mason Marchment is a left winger. He's 6'4", 209, 27 years old. He had 1 point in the playoffs for the Panthers, 54 games played regular season, 18 goals, 29 assists, 47 points, plus 29. The next rumor that came out was Jesse Puljujarvi from the Edmonton Oilers. Right wing, 6'4", 201, 24 years old, 3 points in the playoffs, 65 games played regular season, 14 goals, 22 assists, 36 points. And then the latest one today from the Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche, Andre Burakovsky. He is over 6 foot as well, over 200 pounds. 8 points in the playoffs, 80 games played, 22 goals, 39 assists, 61 points, plus 12. Notice a little bit of a trend there, Zach?
Well, all the dudes are over 6 foot for one.
Yeah.
But they were
looking to add a little bit of strength and size, I think, to his roster.
Well, I can tell you personally, I don't know if I've ever told you this in the past, but I really like Burakovsky as a player. So
yeah,
if they were to go for him, like, count me the fuck in. I mean, you know who my trade target is every offseason at Victor Arvidsson, because he's a beast.
Yeah.
Love that boy. But
yeah.
no, I mean, I personally, I kind of feel like even though, yes, we should get a goalie, I mean, Craig Anderson kind of did the best he could in the situation he was in last year, but he actually did better than I thought he would, which I'm assuming the Sabres also saw that since they just re-signed him. So, I mean, if I was to see him go for a trade, probably I'd want it to be an offensive trade more than none. Because I kind of think, like, we're at that point where our defense could kind of survive as long as our offense scores goals. And then if the defense plays well, then you don't really need the best goalie in the world. So, I don't know. I feel like if we are going to trade, we should try and get rid of that 3rd first-round pick and try and package to get a player in return.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. That's the kind of thing that I want to see happen at the draft. I'm hoping that they're able to package that with possibly, even if you have to package it next year, we have 2 second-round picks, so you could expend one of those, and then we are going to have to get rid of some players, depending on who is signed in free agency. But regardless, with the Sabres wanting to bring up both Quinn and Peterka, who knows if they make the team, but they're definitely going to have a very solid shot at making it. It's going to be tight, and somebody's going to be left out that shouldn't be left out. The one goalie that they are kind of in and free agency, not linked to like the other 3, but name that's been kind of floating out there, Darcy Kemper. who also came from the Avalanche. 57 games played, 37 wins, 12 losses, 254 goals against, and a 921 save percentage. I think those numbers are a little bit inflated for the fact that Colorado had a very good defense all year. But see, they're going after offensive players at least being linked to in free agency. I haven't seen any defenseman yet, which is something that I'm a little disappointed in. I do think that they need to add a defenseman. Kevin Adams has said before they need to add a defenseman. They want somebody that can either play with Owen Power or Rasmus Dahlin, because at the end of the year, the pairings were Dahlin and Power, whereas Dahlin was typically on the right side, but because they have so many right shot defensemen, they moved Dahlin over, which is actually where he played before he was drafted. And I thought he played much better on the left side. So I think they keep him there. But I do think that they need to bring in a veteran defenseman, which is why there was a PK Subban rumor very early on in the offseason. That's kind of cooled off. I don't know if they're still in on him. I have a feeling that he's going to go back to the Devils. He has a really good relationship with Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes. So I think that they may stay together. But his brother, Malcolm Subban, did play for the Sabres. He had nothing but good things to say about the Sabres. And I do believe that Malcolm Subban will be back. Whether he's with Rochester or Buffalo is to be seen. But yeah, that's kind of who they're in on. But I agree with you. I think adding an offensive player to the Sabres team is not going to hurt at all. They were very good last year in terms of our expectations. But if they want to make the playoffs this year, they definitely need to get some more scoring. They added a little, the scoring normally for the Sabres was typically through the first line and then maybe like a player or two on the second line. Last year, we kind of saw scoring up and down the lineup, but it wasn't enough, right? There were a lot of guys that had like single-digit goals, single digit. Okay, here's a double digit. Here's a guy in the 30s. Here's a guy in the 30s. And then we got, 4, 2, 8, 12. Like, that's good, and it's a step in the right direction. But to be a playoff team, you need to see more guys in the second and third line hitting like 15, 20, 25 goals, that type of thing. So I think adding one of those players helps for sure. So we'll go to, we covered the UFA rumors. The RFAs for the Sabres, restricted free agents. You're aware of the Olofsson contract talks, correct?
That one I did hear about.
Yeah,
bit. Not a lot, but a little bit I heard.
They are progressing, and we haven't heard any leaks on what the term or money is. And I'm kind of interested to see how you feel on it, because Victor Olofsson is 27 years old, good scoring winger, not the greatest at 5-on-5, a very dangerous power play threat, right one-timer, quick shot, quick release when he gets time and space. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, my first initial negative thoughts are that unless I just haven't been watching enough hockey, he has not been, I want to say nearly as good, but I feel like that's maybe a little harsh. He has not been as nearly as good as he was when Jack Eichel was here. That being said, though, like you said about his offensive ability, a very good power play guy. He has a very good shot, but that won't get you anywhere if you can only play when there's less men on the ice, whether it's for your team or for both and whatnot. So I don't know. Are there what are the rumors about how much he should get right now? Like what's expected?
Like I said, there hasn't been anything, which is very odd. Normally there's some leaks on guys like contracts, like what they want. The Sabres situation too, with being so low in cap right now, I'm not really worried about the money part of it. I'm more or less worried about the term. Like, if you want to go ahead and throw $6 million at Victor Olofsson, I'm okay with that. But once you start talking about $6 million at 4+ years, that's when I start getting a little worried. And I think that Victor Olofsson wants term on his deal. But at the same time, once a player, like my kind of rule of thumb is once a guy hits 30, that's kind of when they start going down. Their numbers are going to go down. They're going to start slowing down. Typically speaking, there are guys that are exceptions. We've all seen that. But a guy like Victor Olofsson, who doesn't have the strongest skating in the world, he doesn't have the strongest passing in the world, he doesn't have the quick feet that a lot of guys have. Like he's a very, I've used this term with Jeff Skinner before. He's a very one-dimensional player, right? So throwing money at him is not a problem right now. They want to save their money for the young guys, but they have a couple years before all these guys get off their ELCs and they have to pay them. I just worry about the term. I don't want Victor Olofsson here at 35 years old making $7.5 million. That's what I don't want to see. And I think the Sabres realize that, and I think that's kind of what's holding everything up, if I'm not mistaken. I can't, I don't know. I don't have any information on it, but if that's my gut feeling. But it'll be interesting to see. Like they said, they're close on a contract. Kevin Adams just had a press conference today from the draft. He said they're close on an extension with them, and it's their number one priority right now. But like I said, the term scares me. I don't know how you feel about the term, but
Well, I mean, I guess just using this knowledge I've gotten now, based off of the numbers you were kind of floating around, would you say a good contract right now? Because so does he have any years left on his deal, or like they have to sign him now?
no, he's up. So he can't be being an RFA. Just for like you and any viewers who don't know, that's restricted free agency. So even if he doesn't sign by opening night, Sabres still own his rights up until December 1st. If he doesn't sign by December 1st, he can't play this season. And once free agency hits next year, then he can go sign with another team. But Sabres own his rights right now, and I don't know if he has arbitration rights, which would then go to like a team lawyer, and they would kind of meet in the middle. Like you get the player want and the team offer, and they kind of settle the contract in between for them. I don't know if he has arbitration, but like I said, for a guy, if you score goals in the NHL, your contract is automatically going to be more than a guy who, say, has 50 assists. Like 50 assists is great. That's what you want on your team. But if you score 30 goals, 35 goals, 25 goals consistently, you're already looking at more money because that's more valuable to a team. So Victor Olofsson is kind of in that boat, right? He's been a guy that's had 20-goal seasons. He was very close to a 30-goal season. This year, he was in the 20s again. So he's a goal scorer. He's somebody they count on to put the puck in the net. So his numbers are going to be up. The $6 million I just kind of threw out there, I don't think that, he's going to get that much. I would say definitely not over 7.5. If he gets 7.5, his agent is amazing. But I would put the number anywhere between like 4.5 to 6.
Right. So I was going to say, I guess, how old is he again?
He's already 27 going on 28 years old.
Okay. So then would you say, like, if you had to see a fair contract, like a 4-year, $5 million deal, like, would you be all right with that?
4 years at $5 million is something that I wouldn't love to be my ideal, but I could definitely live with that.
Okay.
Because you're gonna get, a few more prime years out of Victor Olofsson. $5 million is not a lot in terms of a player, especially if they can score goals for you. And then at the same time, it didn't happen this year. It's not happening next season, but they are expecting the salary cap to go up again at some point. It's been concreted for a couple of years now because of COVID and everything like that, but they do expect it to go up in the next couple of years. So $5 million is something that I can definitely live with. I could live with $6 million, but anything over 6, I start shaking my head at and going, it's not worth it. Like you could definitely trade Victor Olofsson right now with his RFA, just like the Minnesota Wild did with Kevin Fiala, and you could get a good return for it. the only argument, I see people making with it is Victor Olofsson was a 7th round pick. How many 7th round picks or even past the 2nd round have the Sabres ever hit on where they're an NHL player?
Right.
Not many. And it's nice to see a player develop and get to use that player, but at the same time, I'm not breaking the bank for a player like Victor Olofsson.
Right. All righty. So before we continue any other hockey talk, we are going to have to end this first episode here just simply because we record off of Zoom meetings. So if you don't have the premium version that's paid for by your school, then you only get 40 minutes of recording. So we're going to end this first part right here. Just keep posted for there should be a part 2 titled after this, and that'll be the second half of this discussion. But we'll be right back in a moment.